It's a fairy. We're talking about fairies today. More specifically, we are going to talk about FernGully. Yes, we are. Okay, fine. She's being cute. I'll show you what she looks like when she's being cute. Are you trying to be cute? There is several cute, adorable animals in this movie. One of which has attitude. You have attitude. High five from the baby. The cute baby. Boop. But yes, as I said, we are going to talk about FernGully today. FernGully, The Last Rainforest is the name of the movie. Came out in 1992. This movie is only a few months younger than I am. The only way it could have been better for lining up of time is given the fact that this very much has environmental conservation message, is if it had come out on Earth Day, which is my birthday, in 1992. That would have been awesome. But this movie was shown at the United Nations on Earth Day. It might have been 1993 or 1994, one of the two, probably 93. But it was shown at the United Nations on Earth Day, so it does have that connection. So, FernGully, The Last Rainforest is adapted from the story of the FernGully stories by Diana Young. The movie itself takes place in Australia, near Mount Warning, which is, I think, just a made-up place. I could be wrong. But it's in Australia is where it takes place. And it is supposed to be taking a place, it's in the 90s, like when the movie is is when the movie is set and everything in the 90s. And obviously it is the story of how these fairies interact with a human. And there is, of course, a, powerful pollution monster that they have to fight. And it is kind of this clashing of cultures, but also, trying to learn about each other. The opening lines of the movie are said by Maggie Loon, who is kind of like the wise elder shaman woman magic teacher type character, the mentor type character. And she was like, and she starts it off with telling the story of like how FernGully came to be and everything. She's like, our world was much larger then. The forest went on forever. The tree spirits nurtured the harmony of all living things. But our closest friends were humans. Then, as sometimes happens, the balance of nature shifted. Hexus, the very spirit of destruction, rose up from the bowels of the earth and rained down his poison. The forest was nearly destroyed. Many lives were lost, and the humans fled in fear, never to return. Most believe they did not survive. It was only by calling up the magical powers of nature that I was able to trap Hexus inside an enchanted tree and save FernGully. So the way that this starts is we get this narrative, and as Maggie Loon talks, we get like the opening bit showing all of these different images of like, I love it. It's clearly based off of like Aboriginal artwork for the way that they like show how the story progressed in the beginning, for like, how this legend happened, which for them are true events. And, because she is like this very, 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 very old fairy, although we never know exactly how long ago this has been, but it's been a very long time. And so like Hexus is supposed to be this, this like poison, spirit of destruction as he is described. And of course it's just, they sealed him away in a tree, all of that stuff. So that's just kind of how it is, just, explaining like kind of the backstory of what's going on here. Who Hexus is, the fairies are here, they live in this forest, humans used to live here, but they left, possibly were destroyed. We learned very quickly that's not the case. Humans are still very much around. And almost a whole me later after this movie came out, we still haven't learned our effing lesson for nature, for being more respectful of it. If only this movie had worked. But what ends up happening is we are introduced to Krista, who is the main character of the movie. She is the protagonist. And she is this fairy who has this, she is being trained to, by Magi to be able to, take over as like the next kind of leader guide of the fairies. So, she's being trained how to control her power and everything else like that. But Krista is very flighty, very curious, very interested in the human tales, as they are referred to as, instead of, fairy tales, they're human tales. There's a really good joke about that later, which we'll get to. And so we're introduced to Krista, and she doesn't particularly like studying and everything else like that. So she's much more interested in being out in the rainforest with her friend Pip and his gang of beetle riders that are not fairies, and I don't know exactly what they are, but they're not bugs. They're not fairies. They don't have wings, but they're like bugs or something. And they fly around on beetles that are like motorcycles, which is just funny. And so there's that, which is just really funny. But what ends up happening is, we're introduced to them, and we get kind of the opening song, Life is a Magic Thing, which as Krista is flying through the rainforest area, we see a bunch of different animals. We see cassowaries and sugar gliders and other snakes, different things like that. I love cassowaries. They are gorgeous birds, but they are effing terrifying. If you want proof that birds descended from dinosaurs, cassowaries. Just cassowaries. Not quite the terror birds that used to be around several hundred thousand years ago, but still pretty dang terrifying things, and I would not want to make any of them angry. But there's cassowaries here, sugar gliders, a bunch of other animals that we see that are very native to Australia. And, so we're introduced to a bunch of this stuff, just kind of getting a good look through the forest as the song plays in the background. And we see, Krista flying around, we see her teasing Pip. And then Krista ends up flying up through the canopy and ends up, seeing in the very distance, she sees this big black cloud in the distance. And then she is almost attacked by a hawk. Well, she is attacked by a hawk. She's almost eaten by the hawk. Pip saves her by pulling her out of the way in time. And then she's like, oh, I have to go tell Magi about what I saw. There was a big black cloud in the distance. It might be Hexus. And she heads off back to where Magi is, and they're just talking. And Krista's like, there was this big cloud, and I flew above the canopy, and there was this big black cloud in the distance. What if it's Hexus? What if he escaped? And Magi is just like, there isn't a force in nature that could release him, and there are no poisons here on which he can feed. Hexus is trapped for all time. And so it's implying that she understands why Krista is scared, and she is still worried about it because she knows that there could be something outside of nature. My mom just left. Go to my sister's. And, so Magi is kind of worried about this. But she doesn't show her fears opening. She just moves on to trying to help teach Krista about what's going on, about, how to use her powers. And she's trying to teach Krista that, all of the magic in the world exists inside of just a little seed. That can exist inside a little seed, no bigger, for the fairies, it's even small, these seeds that the fairies can pick up are just so tiny in comparison to what humans see. And what ends up happening is she's trying to get Krista to help control her powers. And, Krista tries to make the seed grow, and it doesn't work, and then Magi can do it kind of effortlessly. It just makes makes the seed grow and help this, stump want to live a bit longer and everything. Do you want out? Okay, Brenda went downstairs. See how long until she comes back up. But what ends up happening is, so Magi is still kind of worried about what's going on, but Krista heads off to go just, spend time with her friends, Pips and the others. And then we have... I love this character. Then we are introduced to Batty Coda, who is this bat that shows up. He has been experimented on by humans. He has wires running through his brain. And he shows up. He crash lands into the area. And, he can't see the fairies and everything because, bats are blind for the most part. They use sonar and everything. And he managed to escape from a facility where he was being experimented on humans. Krista casts a spell on him, giving him the gift of fairy sight. Meaning that now he can see fairies. And, he is then very just like a bit more, he's able to see the fairies. He's able to understand them again. Or understand them and everything. And he ends up talking with the fairies, and he ends up telling them about what's been going on with him. We get the Batty rap, Batty rap, and he's just like going off about like explaining like all the stuff that he's been experimented on with and everything else like that. They take red wires, green wires, shove them through me. Just like all this other stuff that he's going through and telling the fairies about what's going on, about what he's been through, his experience with humans. And they're all just like, fairies aren't real. And like Krista's father shows up and he's just like, now Krista, aren't you a little old to believe in human tales? She came back. And Batty's like, human tails? Humans don't have tails. They have big, big bottoms that they wear with bad shorts. They walk around going, hi, Helen. I will address this here, and it will be addressed at the end of the movie. I love the fact that Batty is voiced, or at the end of the video, I love the fact that Batty is voiced by Robin Williams. Batty was supposed to be like an 8-minute part. And he's so integral to like how like they craft stuff around the story. Robin Williams did like 18 freaking hours of improvised lines for this, to the point where it's like the other actors who were like in the booth with him, doing the scenes with him, the girl who played Krista and such, they are just, there's takes of them trying so hard not to break because Robin is being so funny. God rest his soul. God rest you. God bless you, Robin Williams. We miss you so much. But just, he just goes off, Batty is just great. Batty is just complete and utter random crap this entire movie. And he's perfect, and I love him. And he just, like, goes off at so many different points in time. It's just Robin Williams just having so much fun. And it's great. It is so great because what happens is Batty has this like antenna sticking out of his head, and every time the wires connect, it like puts him on a different frequency or a different channel. So it messes with his personality every time that the antenna is hit. And he like picks up, I guess, radio waves, TV waves, other things like that just like mess with him. It's like, I don't know how much of that was intentional when they first designed Batty, or if it was just they got Robin into the booth and then he just goes off and they're like, how can we come up with a way to make this work? And then they just like, his brain gets scrambled every time they touch the antenna. So that's just what keeps happening. The antenna just keeps getting touched. So I love that. I love Batty. I love this role. And he did this right before he did Genie in Aladdin, because these movies came out roughly around the same time. And there was reason Jeffrey Katzenberger, and I'll talk about this at the end of the video. I just want to get back into the actual story of the video. I'll talk about this more in the casting section down the line when I get to the end of it for the voice cast. But so what ends up happening is, so Coda, Batty is just basically, just confirmed to Krista that, yeah, there are humans out there. And what ends up happening is Krista now wants to go to Mount Warning, and Batty follows her there because she wants to go and see what's going on there. She wants to go and see what the big the smoke cloud is about, and humans and everything else like that. And they get there, and we end up seeing, we are introduced to the Leveler, which is this big, giant deforestation machine that just cuts through trees like they're butter. And we are introduced to these guys. There's Tony and, what are their names? Tony and, I don't remember what the two names of the guys are that are in the truck. Tony and Ralph are the two guys in the truck. One of them One's skinny, one's fat. One of them really likes to eat. And they're like the head guys in this, in the leveler. And then there's other guys outside of the leveler that are all just like spraying the trees with the X's and everything else like that for them to go after. And one of the guys that is out spraying the trees is this young teen. They're on a summer job. His name is Zach. And we're introduced to him, and via him trying to chase a bug, he ends up putting a big X on the giant frickin' tree that looks like it's a tree that you don't want to go near because it's very ominous, and this is a tree that Hexus is in because reasons. And it's just like, maybe don't go and put the X on the giant tree that looks like it's possessed. Maybe don't do that. But so Zach does that. And then we also have it that, Krista and Batty have shown up, and Batty is trying to convince Krista to not go. He's like, don't go there. Just leave it alone. Just don't go that way. And, humans are horrible. Don't trust them. Don't go near them. And Batty just kind of stays back, and then Krista goes on, and she ends up seeing Zach and everything. And then he kind of sees what looks like a light flitting in and out of the, bushes. So he goes over and tries to catch the light, and that's Krista. And he ends up catching her. And then as he opens his hands, all he sees is this like little blue ball of light. And one of the trees is coming down and is about to land on him. Krista's intention is to give him the gift of fairy sight. Unfortunately, she says fairy size. And uses her powers, and it makes him shrink. All the way down to the size of a fairy that's like 3 inches tall or whatever. And he's shrunk, and he lands on a spider web. The tree is being eaten by the leveler, is being, shredded by the leveler. And Batty shows up right at the nick of time to grab them off of the spider web and gets them away. In the process of escaping, Batty looks down at Zach, who is in one of his claws, and Krista, who is in the other, and he realizes that Zach is a human. Then we get the scene where Krista basically kind of like goes through his pockets and ends up finding his wallet, which has funny pictures of him with dogs, which is like, okay, you get points for the funny pictures of you and dogs. And then she also pulls out his pocket knife, and she has no idea what that is. And then Zach wakes up, sees her holding his knife and holding the pocket knife, and thinks she's trying to mug him, which is just funny. And then from, introductions get done, kind of, / Zach and Batty try to fight each other because Batty is trying to protect Krista from Zach. And he's like, puff up. They hate that. It's like, is that, I think what you're thinking of are bears. Batty, not humans. Although to a degree, some humans, if they puff up their chest enough, other humans will leave. We'll leave them alone if they're scary enough. But Batty and Zach end up fighting, almost fighting in order to protect Krista from each other because I think they each other are a threat. Zach just kind of ends up like he's like not believing what's going on. And then he ends up falling out of the tree and basically ends up getting almost eaten by this giant goanna named Lou. And we get the song, If I'm Gonna Eat Somebody, It Might As Well Be You, which is written by Jimmy Buffett, I think, and then was recorded by a rap artist. And he's singing goanna, and we see him chasing Zach throughout like the underbrush of the forest, and we're getting to see a bunch of these other animals because there's like singing leeches and a bunch of these other animals that we see as like the goanna is chasing Zach, and then almost eats him, but he's saved by Krista. Zach is saved by Krista, and then he has this moment where he gets very flipped out and angry, which is fair. I would not be happy if I got randomly shrunk down and then almost eaten. And what ends up happening is he's mad at Krista, and he's like, "You shrunk me. I'm 3 inches tall. What is going on here?" And he is just very, very upset about this. as I said, which is fair. And then Krista's explaining it to him of like, I'm sorry, I was trying to fit, I was trying to help you, but it didn't work, and I made you small, and I don't know how to fix that, and I'm sorry. And he's like, great, I've been shrunk by an amateur. And I'm like, to be fair, most people who get shrunk are being shrunk by amateurs. It just depends on why the heck you're being shrunk and who is doing it. Silly girl. And what ends up happening is, from there, we cut back to Zach's superiors, and they end up cutting into the enchanted baobab tree, which is where Hexus is, that got the red mark on it because of Zach. And they cut into the tree, and they bring all of the trees, wood, and everything like that into their, into the leveler. And then out of the wood starts just to like bubble up and leaks down, falls out this just clump of slime. And this is Hexus. And it starts just like sucking on the machinery and everything else like that, because like it's sucking the grease and the gasoline and the poisons into itself, because that's what Hexus feeds on. And he's like finds his way outside of the device, and he's like, delicious, a first-class smoke, mother's milk, and what is this delightful thing, and how did I get out of that tree? Oh, of course, humans. What wonderful creatures. So clever, so helpful. I must take this wonderful human thing to FernGully. Tim Curry is Hexus, and I love it. Tim Curry. Tim Curry and Robin Williams in the same freaking movie. How often do you get that to happen? This. And what ends up happening is Hexus is like starting to, make his way through the leveler, and is, slowly getting bigger and bigger as he, chows down on all of the toxins and everything that are around them. We cut back to Zach and Krista, and they're just talking about, like, Zach, Krista's talking about magic and how, she's learning how to use it and everything else. And then Zach ends up saying that he has, like, his own kind of magic. So they go underneath this flower where it's dark, and Zach pulls up, and lights a match. And he shows it to her, and she's, of course, befuddled by this. And she ends up touching it and burning her hand. And then Zach kind of helps soothe it. And we're having, of course, this, it's the trope and the thing of those, like, Zach and her are starting to, fall in love with each other. I kind of think Krista has feelings for Pips, but I think it's more childhood best friends type of a romance type of a thing for that. And then, of course, Zach is like this new, interesting guy that has shown up, and he knows all about this other world with humans and everything else like that, and he's different than anyone she's ever known type of a thing. So it's like those types of feelings. But for him, it's like, really pretty girl, and she's spending time with me, so type of a thing. And we end up getting this conversation where where he explains to her what the leveler is. And he's like, oh, well, it can't move. And she goes, oh, you mean those red X's? They must have magic powers that make it that the leveler can't go past them. And he's like, yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. So Zach is not being fully truthful as to what's going on here. He's hiding the true reason as to what the humans are doing. And of course, the humans are there cutting down the trees to use to make paper and lumber and everything else like that. They're lumberjacks. That's what they're doing. And, so that's what's going on there. But Zach's not quite being fully honest with her about this. While that's going on, Hexus manages to somehow take over the comms of the leveler and tells the Zach's bosses, Tony and Ralph, tells them that they are going to be going to FernGully, which apparently they know what FernGully is, and that's where they're going. Also, apparently he sounds exactly like their boss, so whatever. And then while that's going on, Hexus, then we get the Toxic Love song, sung by Hexus. And as this, as the leveler is kind of moving along and taking in more and more trees and producing more and more toxins and everything, Hexus is just like absorbing all of these and getting bigger and bigger. And he's just so happy about this. And then he ends up inside of like the power energy, the energy thing for it, just, just like fully taking over the leveler, drinking in all of the, slime and sludge and everything else that's coming off of the leveler, from it, like it's liquid, like it's, mother's milk, as he says, because that's what it is for him. Then we get to the first night that Zach is small, and we have it that, Krista and Zach have been talking to each other for a while, talking about each other's worlds and everything. Well, Batty's nearby listening in, and they're just, talking, and Krista's like, but how can you live without trees? Zach, easy. Krista, but trees give life. They make clouds and the water, the air. And he's like, we have air. And the Batty goes, yeah, if you don't mind getting all your minerals in one breath. And we get this bit's going on, and then we get it transitions into nights. We're getting to see the rainforest at night and everything else like that. And we get the song Raining Like Magic, so we get this nice little, melody there going through there. We get to the next morning, and Krista wakes up to find that Zach is trying to carve her name into a tree, which she does not like. And she's just she gets very upset about this. And he's like, I'm carving your name, Krista. And she's like, no, you mustn't do that. Can't you feel his pain? And she takes his hand and she puts it on the tree. And Zach can't feel the pain, which, Batty says, humans can't feel anything. They're numb from the brain down. And I'm like, some humans, yes. Some humans, yes. They are numb from the brain down. And this just makes Krista very sad because Zach can't, feel the pain from the trees. With the fact that he was carving into him, he can't feel the pain that he was causing the tree. This makes Krista kind of sad. So she's like, okay, well, come on, I'll take you to Maggie. And, they start making their way down the river like a little, bean pod boat. And then they end up getting found by Pip's guys who pick Zach up and they take him back to FernGully. And, Krista's with them and everything. And they get to FernGully, and we get this whole conversation with Krista talking to the fairies, and Zach is there, and she's like, but just think, humans back in the forest. And Batty is like, yep, there goes the neighborhood. Be nice, Batty. First thing, all these trees go. Then come the highways. Then come their then come your shopping malls and your parking lots and your convenience stores. And then Zach short circuits Batty's antenna, and his personality changes to price check on prune juice, Bob. Price check on prune juice. That was always one of my favorite things as a kid. And there's an extra layer of humor to this because my dad has worked in grocery stores for my entire life. So price checks are things I understand. Not that you have to be a part of that to understand, but it's just funny. And it's just, I might just try to find a video that is just nothing but going through and talking about Batty for this movie, because Batty is just so funny and all the different, antenna things that keep happening with Batty. Because Robin Williams was just on his A game for this. Same thing with Jeannie. Different character, but very, very similar randomness, which is just the way that Robin Williams' brain worked. And this one, he's allowed to be even more random than Genie, because Genie, at least to a degree, has to stick to the plot of the movie of Aladdin a bit more than Batty has to stick to the plot of this as much. So we get that. And of course, Zach is introduced to Pips and a bunch of the other fairies. And then Pips had managed to find Zach's Walkman that had fallen into the river. And it's, they bring it back to the fairies. And Pip's trying to explain what it is, and he has no idea what it is. So then Zach takes over, and he starts playing music on the Walkman. And we get, I think it's Land of a Thousand Dances, is I think the song that goes here. So it's like, Zach basically puts on a little mini concert for the fairies, which is just funny. And he's trying to, he's like getting the fairies to start dancing and everything else like that. So we get like a nice scene here with like all the fairies having fun and, Krista dancing and everything. And then Pips tries to take Zach off to go do something else, probably just because he's threatened by, Pips is threatened by Zach because Pips clearly has feelings for Krista, and he's threatened by Zach. He's also worried that Zach might do something to hurt Krista, which is fair, given the circumstances. But Krista gets Zach, and they head off, and they end up having a little romantic adventure in a cave. And we get the song, a dream worth keeping, as like they're frolicking through this like little mini, grotto cave thing with like, water in the ground. And like the rocks just sparkling, like there's like stars all around them. So we get like this little scene that looks like it's taking place at night, but it's not. And, at one point in time, Krista and Zach end up, they're holding hands. And it's Krista's magic seems to connect with Zach. And they end up both like floating in midair. They almost kiss, but they don't. And then they make their way out. And Krista goes off to go get Madge so she can, unshrink Zach. And what ends up happening is Zach then ends up touching one of the trees, and he can actually now start to feel the pain from the trees. And he starts looking around, and like everything is like duller and more muted in the color. And he looks in the water, and he feels it, and he feels that there's like oil in the water. And he's like, oh no. And he knows that the leveler has moved and that it's gotten to FernGully. And Krista goes and she finds Madge. And Madge is just sitting there very sad, and she points to one of the trees, and Krista goes over and she touches it, and she's like, can you heal it? Because we see like the pain of the trees obviously is symbolized by like red whenever like the fairies or when Zach touches it. It's symbolized as red. Red on their hands because it's supposed to be like red like blood. She's like, can you fix it? And Madge goes, a force outside of nature did this. I can't heal it and I can't stop it. And Krista goes, Zach can. I know what did this, Maggie. A monster the humans fight. Humans can stop it. They have these magic red marks that... And then we get like as the camera turns and the camera turns and, Maggie like cuts her off, and Krista looks and she sees that all around them are the remnants of the trees that were cut, and they have the red marks on them. She's like, but Zach said, and like we cut and we see Krista like looking, flies higher, and all she sees is just leveled trees, tree stumps, all cut, and the logs being loaded onto a truck by one of the other lumberjacks, by one of the other humans. And she's like, humans did this. Humans did it all. And it's just, she's just, her faith in Zach is now destroyed at this point in time, which is understandable, given the fact that he did not tell her the truth. And he's just so sad about this. Or she is just so sad about this. Zach shows up to the fairies, and they're all looking at him because they all know that what's going on is his fault. It's like, the humans showed up, and now a bunch of bad things are happening. Yeah, this is kind of your fault. This has to be your fault. They're not wrong. And what ends up happening is, Krista shows up and she, kind of floats over to Zach, and he apologized. He's like, I wish the human tales were true. They're not here to protect the forest. They're cutting down trees. They're destroying the forest, and I was helping them do it. Batty was right. And Batty's like, I was? Because, I think partly Batty didn't want to be right. Zach has been fairly nice to him, but it's also Batty's not used to anyone believing him. And then Zach's like, they're coming this way. You can't stop them. You'll have to leave. And then, and you know, it's this very solemn moment because it's just like, he's like, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The humans aren't what you thought they used to be. Maybe they used to be your friends in the past, but they're not anymore. Or at least the ones that I'm here with aren't. And I'm sorry, and I was part of it. And now they're here. And I can't do anything about it. And, you know, he's like, he's ready to give up. He's ready to just, you know, give up. Because that's just, you know, what he, you know, that's just kind of the way it is. It seems very hopeless at this point in time. And this is when Madge shows up. And she gathers all of the fairies into the circle, into this tree that is kind of like a sacred tree for them. And she gathers them all in there, and Zach kind of like finds his way in there too as he's like looking and watching. And Madge, she pulls up a seed, and she is giving this speech to all the fairies, and she's like, since the beginning of time, we have been the guardians and the healers of the forest. We have too long forgotten the magic powers of nature. The time has come to call on them again. Remember all the magic that exists within a single tiny seed. All the magic of creation exists within a single tiny seed. And, you know, she makes the little seed glow, and then she herself is starting to fade. And all of the fairies start flying around, and they're flying in this circle again and again. Like the tree itself is like closing up, trying to do something to try to protect them, because that's the best that they can do at the moment, is try to have the tree protect them. Using their powers to fuse it together to make a tree cage to try to protect them from Hexus. Try to protect them from Hexus. Nexus, I think, was a monster in Charmed, if I remember correctly, was some type of demon from Charmed, but it's been a long time, so I don't remember. But what ends up happening is, you know, Maggie is starting to like kind of fade. Her you know, she's dulling and becoming like blue when she was like these very vibrant pinks earlier. And Krista flies over to her, and Maggie is like, look for the hero inside yourself, Krista. Look to the good and loving heart in you and all others. For just as every seed holds the power of magic of creation, so too do you and every other creature in this world. And Krista's like, Maggie, don't leave me. And Maggie's like, I love you. I'll always be with you. We all have a power, and it grows when it's shared. Remember what you've learned, Krista. And then Maggie just, you know, kind of disintegrates isn't the right word, because it's not like what happens in Infinity War with Thanos and the snap and everything. It's not like what happens there. It is more along the lines of she just kind of, well, she turns into specks that, you know, glowing specks that then scatter, and like little bit, you know, all the different fairies get one, and even Zach has a little bit that lands in him as the tree opens back up. And of course, Krista is very sad because Maggie is now gone. But at this point in time, the leveler has now shown up, and we see Hexus on top of it. And they're like, well, I have no idea what to do. All the fairies are still scared and everything. And Zach is like, okay, well, I at least have to try to do something. And he gets Batty, and he has to like flick Batty's antenna several times to get it where Batty will actually, you know, get into the right frequency. He goes through like Caesar and something else, and then it lands on like kind of like a John Wayne going into war type of a character is what he's like tapping into. And then Batty's like flying him toward the cab of the leveler, so that way Zach can try to get Tony and Ralph, get them to turn off the leveler, because that'll at least like cut off, you know, stop the leveler, because one of the saws is like starting to go through the tree cage. That's where the fairies are. There's like other animals in there as well. And so that's what's going on. Zach ends up getting onto the cab, and Batty unfortunately gets knocked down by some debris and everything because of Hexus. And Tony and Ralph see him, and they're just like, oh my god, because Zach is now tiny. And then they see Hexus, and then they're like, nope, and they get out of the machine, but the machine's still running. Zach manages to get himself inside. Pips actually ends up helping him. Zach gets inside, and he manages to turn off the leveler. And this is what kind of kicks into, like, next Hexus is kind of, he loses that power now because it's, the machine's off. So we see him, like, freaking out, and then he kind of, like, disappears back into the leveler, and then he reemerges as, like, this giant demonic skeleton creature made of oil, and it breathes fire. And at this point in time, like, Krista had tried to do something, and she got knocked down. And then she looks over and she sees, like, the seed, and she hears Maggie saying, like, all the powers of creation exist even inside this tiny seed. And Krista does what Maggie did in the past. She grabs the seed and she flies right up to Hexus, and then Hexus eats her. And then we start to see, like, plant starts growing out of the top. So he, like, grabs out of his head, and he like grabs that and throws it away. And then it grows back. And then, like, vines start growing out of his arms and everything. Because Krista inside is just supercharging this seed to make it grow inside of Hexus. And Pips leads the other fairies into, go, help it grow. And they're all just, like, using their powers to just make the seed grow inside of Hexus. And it's covering Hexus and the leveler and just engulfing all of it and trapping Hexus again. And, like, Tony and Ralph are off to the side watching as this is all happening. I wonder if any of the other lumberjacks see it happen. But they're watching as this happens. And they're just like, oh my god, which is fair. And they go, that we watch as this happens. And Hexus is sealed away. And then everyone is really upset because they think Krista is dead. They don't know what's going on. And then, like, flowers bloom, and then one of them opens, and Krista is inside of it, and she is perfectly unharmed and alive. And she wakes up, and every time that we saw Maggie floating somewhere, we would see, like, flowers starting to grow in her path and in her wake. And this is what happens with Krista at the end. As she flies down, we see, flowers starting to grow in her wake. And she's, hugs her has her father. She sees Pip. She hugs Zach. She's so happy to see Zach. And he tells her that Zach tells Krista that he has to go back because he at least has to try to do something to fix what's been going on, to try to make a change, to try to help save what's left of FernGully. And he says goodbye, and she gives him a seed as he leaves, and and he says goodbye to he says goodbye to Pips. And then as he's leaving, Krista, she makes him human size again, return you to the form that is true. And, he gets big again. And the first thing he does is he goes over and he sees the debris that had hit Batty, and he picks up Batty and, gets the debris off of him. And, he triggers the antenna, which wakes Batty up, zaps Batty back to life, possibly. And then Batty is just like, oh no, I shrank. And then he just, like, freaks out and flies off. But Zach knows that Batty's okay, and that Krista, of course, take care of Batty. And from there, what ends up happening is, as Tony and Ralph are, like, watching off to the side, and Zach plants the seed that he got from Krista. And he goes over to Zach and Tony and is like, we've got to go back. Let's go basically, like, fix what we broke. And as they're walking away, we see Krista is watching them, and she hears Maggie's voice saying, make it grow. And Krista uses her powers that she can now control to make the seed that Zach just planted, to make it grow. And as it grows, it covers the tree that Hexus is now sealed in flowers and in bloom and everything else like that, as, like, Zach, Tony, and Ralph are watching this happen. So they head off to hopefully go and help make things better. Spoiler alert, some things have gotten better. Other things have gotten worse. But yeah, you get the idea. And then, it fades to black and we get the For Our Children and Our Children's Children is like what this film is dedicated to. And then we get the end credit song, which is Some Other World, sung by Elton John. So that's nice. Then we get into the voice cast. So we have Samantha Mathis as Krista. I don't know if she's been in anything else. Christian Slater is Pips. I know he's been in other stuff, but I don't know much off the top of my head. Jonathan Ward is Zach. Tim Curry is Hexus, as I said. Robin Williams is Batty. And then Grace Zabritsky is Maggie / the narrator. So, I love this movie. There is a sequel to this movie. I do not know if I will do a review of the sequel, mostly just because of the fact of I haven't decided. Some of the movies I will do the sequel, some of them I won't. I just haven't fully decided which ones will be the sequels and which ones will not. Or which ones I will do the sequels of and which one I will not. Some of the Land Before Time ones I will. All Dogs Go to Heaven I will. Balto maybe. I haven't fully decided that. Some of the other ones down the line we'll see. But I love this movie. I love the message of this movie. I've always loved, like, just Krista's design in general. She's so cute. Batty is adorable. I want to make a character at some point that just gets to be as random as Batty. But since my brain is not wired anywhere near the way that Robin Williams was, I would just have to figure up a way of, like, how to make that happen. How to make this random of a character. Because, like, Robin Williams was one of the kings of improv. And as I said, this was his first animated role. He recorded this before he did the recordings for Aladdin, for Genie. And I think it was Jeffrey Katzenberger, who was in charge of Disney Animation at that point in time, had he had tried to get Robin Williams to back out of playing Batty because he didn't want Robin Williams playing two different characters that were animated at the same time, particularly with one of them being technically competition to Genie in Aladdin. But it's like, come on, dude. Just let it go. It's fine. He's fine. Let him play the role. It was a great role. It's awesome. I've loved the role ever since I was a kid. I didn't know it was the same guy that played Genie until years later. I just thought it was some other thing. It's like, I grew up on this movie. So many of the movies that are on this list are ones that I grew up on or I found out about a little bit later on when I got older. But a lot of them are ones that I just grew up on in general. So I love that. Yeah, I know. You and your little waggly tail. I know. Are you being a cute boo? Are you a cute boo listening to Mommy talk about the fairies? Yes, you're a good girl. I'm almost done. Actually, I'm just about done. So, yes, boo. Yes, I know. I know. You're so good. She's such a good girl. She's my good girl. I love her so much. Yes, you are. You're my good girl. I am blanking on what the next one is for this, in regards to what the next movie is for this, but we'll see. I haven't made that decision yet. But that's what I have for this. Thank you very much. If you haven't watched FernGully for a while, or just some of the Robin Williams scenes, just go watch them. They're just fun to watch, and FernGully is just a very good movie. So that's what I have. I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!